I'm not going to talk much, actually. My job now is to interview a fellow who I'm sure all of you are very eager to hear from. His name is Eric Schmidt. He's the CEO of Google. I'd like to bring him on up. Eric?
Hi, nice to see you.
The seat.
Thank you.
Water right down there. Now, before we get started on the whole, Q&A, which I think this is our third or our fourth, and so we're making this a semi-annual event, which I'm very pleased to do.
Well, congratulations on the success of Web 2.0 Expo.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks to everybody for coming. I understand that you have something that you want to announce.
Google's not a normal company. What we thought we would do is give you all a choice of what we're going to announce today. We're a very end-user focused company.
Because they usually only have one or two announcements a quarter, and
Which company? so let's get the first slide up. This is choice one. Double secret beta status. Like it? Choice two. The Wi-Fi thing in April Fool's actually got some traction. People really like it. Choice three, the food becomes a revenue source for the company.
That's already true, isn't it? When you think about it.
Not really. Or maybe choice four is that none of these are really the announcement, but in fact the thing that's doing the presentation is the announcement. This is a feature of something called Google Docs and Spreadsheets that will be coming out in the next couple months. And what it is it's a way of doing presentations. We're very interested in collaboration. We've concluded that collaboration is sort of the killer app for how communities work. And so by adding the ability to share and generate presentations to already our spreadsheets and our word processing and our calendar, which are doing extremely well, we can drive a new level of user satisfaction. So that is, in fact, the announcement.
Now, I'll just take the segue there. This completes...
So you don't like double secret beta?
No, well, I'm looking forward to what that really means, understanding that, but I'm actually surprised that search isn't still in beta, but we're going to talk about that later.
Whatever it takes.
So the obvious next question is, this completes what most users of personal computers call the Office suite. This sort of gives you everything that Google offers, presentation, mail, calendaring, word processing, So, how do you think the folks at Microsoft are going to respond to this announcement?
I don't work there.
But you've spent a lifetime almost. You had a very brief period at Google. I remember when we were talking early on for the book.
This is the problem. He's done a whole book on Google, so he knows all of the secrets.
Where we were talking in 2001, 2002, and you were saying, I love being at Google because, man, I don't have to worry about Microsoft for the first time in my career.
Yeah,
being at Sun, being at Novell. I'm finally at this little internet startup, and Microsoft doesn't care about this space, thank God.
Well, I was obviously wrong once again.
Okay, let me rephrase the question. Is this a competitor to Microsoft?
We don't think so. And the reason is that does not have all the functionality, nor is it intended to have all the functionality of products like Microsoft Office. This is really a different way of managing information. It's casual, it's sharing. It seems to be a better fit to how people use the web. And we think it's an example of one of the applications categories on a Web 2.0 framework that we think will be very, very successful. And my guess is that there are many companies represented in the room that are building products like this or other variants of this that are using this emergent architecture. This whole story about Web 2.0, which I view as a marketing term, is really an architectural transition from an older architecture to this new web-based architecture. And that transition, which I think is what everyone in the room is part of, is a fundamental computer architectural transition. Google is one of the companies that's benefiting from it, but there are many others.
Let me just dig in a little bit on that. Come on. It's a competitor to Microsoft Office. I mean, they've, as you've pointed out to me, come on, settle down. As you pointed out to me, there's a whole ton of people who are currently spending a whole ton of money on Microsoft Office who use just an eensy-beensy little bit of the features in Microsoft Office, and this provides them a free alternative, which has got to be exceedingly threatening to the Office business at Microsoft.
Well,
Will you
I'm
acknowledge that?
I'm sure Microsoft will have a response. They actually have a set of web-based products which they can talk about. The important point here is that for people who are using products that are on the web, who need presentation access and the sharing, which is the thing that's really the driving characteristics, they're going to use this or something like this.
Right.
And I think this is a testament to the strength of Web 2.0.
Oh, I would agree with that. Now, let's pull back. There was a small little deal announced after market on Friday. You bought a company.
Because it was material, it was done after the market.
Because it was material, and that's actually interesting because this is the, was YouTube the same?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the second time now that you've had a material deal as opposed to your approach to sort of snatching up really small, nimble teams like JotSpot. Joe was here yesterday. This is a very big, very strategic acquisition. So let's talk about that a little bit. Back when I was interviewing Sergey in 2004, he told me a story of the pre-revenue days at Google, when Google was still trying to figure out whether or not how it was going to make money, and then the whole market fell apart. But they said before the market fell apart, we could always do a deal with DoubleClick because we had a ton of traffic, and so we could just run DoubleClick banners. But man, they're not targeted, and they're gaudy, and they're punch the monkey, and God, we never do that. So now here we are.
I'm not sure what punch the monkey means.
Right. Well, you know, punch the banners that, you know, where you have to punch the monkey. Yeah, anyway. DoubleClick was seen, you know, and this is a company that has evolved, and so has yours, but it was seen as a certain kind of advertising that was really the, you know, the opposite of the Google approach to advertising. So what's changed in 3 years, both in Google's business and in DoubleClick's business, that makes this make sense for Google?
As a bit about how Google thinks about the world, let me suggest that there are 4 sort of major thrusts around Google. One is, and I'll answer your question, but I wanted to get this out for everybody to think about. One is that we're busy building the world's most interesting supercomputers that are running new data services, application services, search services, and so forth. And we can talk about that. It's very interesting. Very, very exciting technology being built at Google. Another has to do with end user solutions. How will end users use information? All the global issues, all the controversies about that. Again, a lot of people have issues and comments about that. A third has to do with advertising. I'll come back to that. And a fourth has to do with the way Google is run and the way we make decisions and the culture that has grown up around Google, which we're obviously very proud of. In the third category of the 4, we've decided over the last couple of years to try to offer a full-scale set of advertising services, not just text ads. So in doing the strategic analysis, we looked at text ads, display ads, banner ads, as you know them. We looked at radio, bought a company there. Television, we're doing a series of trials there. Acquired YouTube, partly because of the end user phenomena, which is extraordinary, and we're very satisfied with that, but also because it's obvious that online video will have a significant advertising component. You put all that together, and you think, what would the advertising customer like? Well, what they would like is they'd like a single way in which they can see ads and then have the computer do the allocation for them. Advertising is really about relevance. It's really about efficiency. It's really about measurability. And there's not been a lot of technology applied to advertising over the last 10 or 20 years, except for a few companies, DoubleClick being one of them. What was interesting about DoubleClick is that since 2004, they've made a lot of changes to the way they operate. They're more targeted, they have better tools, and many, many companies are very, very happy with their products. So when we looked at the business analysis, we thought that the combination of the targeting that they do, the advertising support tools that they build, the publisher support tools they build, combined with Google's technology would produce a better experience for the end user. So what we've said, and of course we've been saying this since Friday night, is that the user will be happier because they'll get a more targeted ad that will be faster to load. The advertiser will get more efficiency, more measurability, more targetability out of the combination. The publisher will get more reach, especially globally. So the math works is the important point.
Well, I've never actually known you guys to do an acquisition where the math doesn't work. It's just that the
Maybe
math...
you could say that to some other people who've
Well,
been
but
criticizing
but the math is terrifying to a lot of other people in the market, right? So it's I wouldn't say well known, but at least well discussed that there were other bidders, and that they dropped out because the price got just a little too nosebleed for them. What is it that allows you to pay $3.1 billion for DoubleClick when the whisper number was $2 billion 5 days before?
I can't comment on any of the specifics of the negotiation just by agreements. So one way to answer that question is to say that Google has a particularly strong advertising business. I think people here in the room know this, because our technology does a better job of targeting. There's a lot of evidence that we have more advertisers, we have more of a global footprint. So we have, if you will, greater cash flow out of that technology. When you marry that to the interesting assets and the technology and the people that DoubleClick have assembled, which is really quite impressive, that's how you get to the number.
Now, one of the things you mentioned was that, you know, and what Google's very good at doing, particularly in advertising, is driving efficiencies through understanding behavioral data, conversion data generally, and creating algorithms that turn that into a more efficient system for buyers and sellers, supply and demand, and all parties involved in a transaction. But one of the things that strikes me that is very true about DoubleClick is that it's human beings, that there are ad buyers and ad sellers who are involved in determining where they want something to be contextually. I want this on that site because I like this site. I can't actually put an algorithm as to why I like this site. I just want my ads there because I read it, or I know people who read it. Are you going to get into that business?
Well, first place, the integration planning with DoubleClick is just beginning, and so during this period of legal review during the acquisition, we have an opportunity to figure out some of the details. We don't have good answers necessarily to every question people have been asking us. The scenario that you described, where humans are making good marketing judgments, is one that can benefit from more automation.
Right.
We can give that human more choices. The human still makes the decision, but they make it quicker. Their efficiency is faster. They have more information ahead of them. Advertising, again, is both an art and a science, and we can provide the science to the artists.
So a couple things. There's so many things to talk about with DoubleClick, and I want to make sure we get to.
Sure.
There's a couple other things you guys do that are interesting to this crowd, so I want to make sure we get to them. But just one or two more things on DoubleClick. Number one, there are a few things that you acquired when you acquired DoubleClick that are businesses, it strikes me, that may or may not make sense for you to own. One of them is Performix, which is a company that makes its entire business in optimizing websites to do better in Google, which puts you into the business of, into the SEO, SEM business, which is a very loud and very vocal community, as you well know. Yes. What's your long-term plan with a company like Performix? Are you going to spin it out?
Well, first place, it's a very important community, and we've not made that decision. Performix is part of the acquisition because, of course, we got the whole thing at once, and we're going to take a look at that.
Right. One last thing is, in Google Pack, which is a suite of software that you give to folks to download, it's very important to your distribution strategy. There's actually an application that deletes DoubleClick cookies. So, is that going to end?
Well, the application is from a third party.
It's a third-party application that you've put into DoubleClick, into Google Pack.
And we actually think that it's a pretty good application, so we'll figure it out.
Had to ask, you know. All right, well, let's move on. There's one more, because it's a bigger question that we can then move to. My company works with Google. We have a partnership with Google, and we have a partnership with DoubleClick. When this deal was announced on Friday night, I started to worry. Was I worrying unnecessarily?
What were you worrying about?
I was worrying that you had too much information about my business. I was worrying that all of a sudden all the stuff that I'm doing over here on DoubleClick and all the stuff I'm doing over here with you was going to be put together, and the wizards, you know, the nerd nirvana, as Joe Kraus put it, we're going to start asking interesting questions I was incapable of asking myself about my own business, and then determining and getting ahead of me in terms of how I ran my business. And I've heard this from newspaper publishers, media companies, you name it. People are a little scared of how much you could know. How do you address that?
a couple of things. The first is that you're not forced to use DoubleClick. You choose to use DoubleClick because it's a great product. Same thing for Google. And the fact of the matter is that if you became unhappy, if after an appropriate due diligence you said, I don't want to deal with these guys, you have other choices. So that's the first answer. You're not locked in. For that reason, it makes no sense for us to get you to that point. And maybe because we announced the deal on Friday night, we didn't have a chance to explain this, plus we're in an integration period.
Well, I didn't get the phone call, Eric.
I know. But the important point here is that these are issues that we're going to work out. We have to solve the problem of you being comfortable, not you personally, but you generically, because we need your business. We need you as a partner. And there are a lot of ways of answering that. One is to keep the particular targeting information that DoubleClick uses completely separate from the Google ad system. Perfectly reasonable way of solving that problem, one of the options that's under consideration. There are others where you could choose to opt in. The default would be opt out. You can choose to opt in.
So it's the cost-benefit analysis.
And from your perspective, what we found with advertisers is that people often express this concern, and after they understand what we really do, and more properly our computers really do, because there's no humans involved in this stuff, then they're quite comfortable. But it's a legitimate concern, and people have legitimate advertising privacy concerns. They also have legitimate end-user privacy concerns. If we lose our advertiser support or end-user support, the company is kaput. So we have to address this, and we have to address it to your satisfaction.
I'm pleased to hear that. Now, Microsoft started stirring the pot with their pals at AT&T saying, antitrust, antitrust.
Sorry, Microsoft?
Well,
did you say Microsoft and AT&T?
Yeah. Did I just not put the golf ball on the tee for him there?
No,
It's like
Microsoft and AT&T.
I know they've had no history of antitrust, and IBM's going to get pissed off pretty soon here.
What is the year?
I know. Well, that's the
2007?
thing. It's a gorgeous story, isn't it, that you have Microsoft and AT&T complaining in the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal about Google and antitrust. I mean, it is sort of a beautiful...
What's beautiful about this?
Do you have a response?
Yes, they're wrong. Come on, they're wrong. Give me a break.
Okay. Note that. They're wrong.
It's false.
Would
you like a stronger answer?
No, for the reasons that you just enumerated in terms of choice, in terms of...
There's a long list of reasons that they're wrong. Advertising is almost $1 trillion business. The totality of what we're talking to here is about 1% of that. This is an emergent business with lots of different choices. Customers have lots, end users have choices, advertisers have choices, and these are people who were involved in the acquisition reviews, as best I can tell, who lost.
Right. So let that sink in for a second. Now, I want to move on then. Let's just talk for a tiny bit about another, there's so many, but another controversial issue around Google. At least this is, the controversy is magnified by the fact it involves the media, which is the media, and so they cover it incessantly. YouTube, copyright, entertainment companies, Viacom lawsuits. Do you believe that Viacom's approach currently is a negotiating tactic?
I do. For people in the room who don't know the history of all of this, there's, and I suspect many of you do, there is a law called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA, passed in roughly 1996, which puts a shared burden on people who are operating in the internet sphere. So we're all covered by this law in the United States. And it roughly says that if somebody violates copyright and uploads or otherwise transfers a copyright violation, and they're violating the law, there's roughly a safe harbor if the companies that act quickly when notified to take it down. The most recent problem we had was that we acted so quickly, we did the wrong thing. We got a letter last Friday from the Australian Broadcasting Corporation asking to take down some copyright material, which we took down immediately. And it was discovered that a 16-year-old in Australia had actually sent the letter, and in fact, it was not a legitimate request. So the ABC people said, would you put it back in? So you know, these are the problems at Google.
Yep.
We, Google, depend critically upon copyright and copyright law And we depend critically that people who have copyrights they get to decide what to do with the copyright. So in the Viacom case, Viacom decided to take down all of the illegally uploaded content into YouTube, which is more than 100,000 clips, and they gave us the proper takedown notices after a long business negotiation, which was unrelated, and we immediately took them down. And we satisfied the law. They sued us sometime later. The important point here is that, one, we fully complied with the law, and the second thing is that YouTube traffic went straight up after that. And so it doesn't look like the YouTube
As did your stock price, actually, in the fall after the acquisition. It was very well received.
Yeah, again, I'm not talking about the stock price. I'm talking about user traffic. And
no relation.
Well, hopefully they're not directly tied together.
Right.
But in any case, the user traffic grew very strongly because YouTube is a sharing and cultural collaborative phenomena that's really about user-generated content. And I think what's happening, my own opinion, is that everyone is deciding that YouTube is the only messenger around online activity, when I think that there will be many. Mm-hmm. YouTube looks like it's going to be the truly successful user-generated content platform. We think this is incredible. And we think it's going to be a wonderful place for people to take copyrighted information and with our support, build advertising-supported copyright-based businesses. But the phenomena of YouTube is independent of this, and this is what I think people are confused about.
Right. So if the Viacom suit is a negotiating tactic, what are they negotiating?
We're bringing out a tool called CYC, Claim Your Content, which will automatically, one of the problems is that under this law, the copyright owner has to actually monitor what's going on their sites. And this is a reasonable amount of work for the people who have lots of interesting and important content. So we're automating that process with a tool called Claim Your Content. As that rolls out, the issues in Viacom become moot.
All right. Let's switch gears here. Yesterday, Jeff Bezos was here, and he gave a demonstration of some of the growth in S3 and EC2. What do you make of that business? Are you watching it closely, and is it a business you're very interested in?
S3 is a very good start. For those of you who did not see it, it's a good example of a platform business that's sort of a web-based platform business, and I think there will be many. In Google's case, we're focused on a somewhat slightly different component of that, which is offering docs and spreadsheets, other things like that, for enterprises, for universities in a product called Google Apps. We recently introduced a Google Apps for Enterprise product, which is similar. So I think both companies have the right principles in mind, and we'll see how successful they are.
But are you going to do something like S3 or EC2?
Well, we wouldn't do anything. We wouldn't do something like S3, but certainly we have.
It's a space you're interested in.
Yeah, we're very interested in the space.
And you're doing it in.
We're doing it in a different way.
In a different way currently.
And it makes sense that this emergent platform, of which Amazon is one, Google's another, Yahoo, eBay are third and fourth. This platform is very powerful. People in this audience are building Ajax and other XHTML applications that are very, very powerful on top of this platform.
Right.
And I don't think a single company will dominate the platform the way the previous ones did.
That brings up my next question, actually. Back yesterday, before Jeff came on, we were ticking off the number of companies with the capacity, the capital, and the will to build really massively scaled platforms that folks in this room can leverage. And it's a handful, maybe two handfuls. But there is one group that really hasn't been part of the conversation, and that's the telcos and the cable companies, in terms of having a platform that anyone here can really plug into and leverage. Do you think they're going to change that stance soon, and are you concerned about them as competitors? Comcast just bought Fandango, for example, and made a very clear declaration that they are coming in this market.
We're not concerned about them as competitors. We see them in most cases as partners.
Right.
If you go back to my first part, which is this discussion about Google building the world's largest supercomputer, we are investing literally billions of dollars of capital into very large, very powerful data centers that can serve as data platforms for many things. We have a set of APIs there's something called the Google Data API. and a number of other services that are exposed that you can build applications into that data service. We think that more applications using that are very good. And there are also similar advertising APIs which allow people to plug into our advertising systems to automate that as well.
But when I ask about the telcos and the cable companies, really what I'm asking is they seem to have a different approach philosophically to the web than Amazon, eBay, Google, AOL, Microsoft. And that this swirls around the oft misinterpreted term of net neutrality. Are you in any way concerned about that? I know that Google has been active in the Capitol on this issue.
Again, we're not concerned about the telcos themselves. We see them as important partners and telcos, cable companies, because we are critically dependent upon the infrastructure that they have built. Literally, customers go through those networks to get to the data servers that I was describing. It's true of our partners and competitors as well. We are very concerned if net neutrality gets broken, because net neutrality really does create the level playing field that created Google and many of the companies represented in this room. The bizarre thing about net neutrality is that if there's any company that could survive a loss of net neutrality financially, it would be Google, because we could pay the fees we could pay to get the kind of specialized service that net neutrality, the failure of net neutrality to win would
It would be basically a large reallocation of your margin to the telcos.
But from the standpoint of the business,
which is interesting to them, I would imagine.
But I'm sure it is. But the important point here is that's a business negotiation. It should not be enshrined in law. And net neutrality is very important for the next generation of entrepreneurs, the next young founders who come out of Stanford or Berkeley who want to create a new vision. They're going to need an end-to-end network that actually connects everybody. That's how they're going to become successful. That's how they're going to get funded. I think it would be terrible if we lost that as a society.
Excellent, I agree. You mentioned entrepreneurs, and we've got a ton of them in the audience here, or they work with and for entrepreneurs. So, what looks interesting to Google in terms of companies you want to partner with or potentially acquire? Feel free to list as many as you wish. And what aren't you interested in?
I'm trying to think, how can I legally ask a question that involves the word acquisition in it?
Okay, let me rephrase it. What areas are you interested in where you do not have a core competence that may be interesting in the future and therefore spark at least a conversation?
About what? Let me answer the question that I think you're asking in a legal way. The biggest growth areas are clearly going to be in the mobile space. Mobile. It's the easiest way to understand it. And the reason is that people treat their mobile phones as extensions of their persons. And those mobile phones are very personal, very portable. They're having GPS information in them now. And this next generation of wireless networks, the 3G and eventually the 4G networks, will have tremendous power. So if you look at the mobile space, it's probably the biggest wide open space. There are quite a few interesting companies that we could partner with, and I won't say beyond that, which are building either applications or advertising services that use the targeting that's capable in mobile. Another area is in the local space. Mm-hmm. Most of the transactions that we do in advertising are really for local products. Go down the street to buy a car, go down the street to go shopping, that kind of a thing. And most search engines don't really fully do not fully take advantage of the local information that's inherent in the web. Mm-hmm. That's another big opportunity. There are quite a few companies that have figured out how to mine, target, or advertise in a local context. Right. Those are the two that come to mind immediately.
Right. Great. Now, I posted on my site asking for questions, and I got a bunch of them, but one that really struck me was, what's the first thing you think of when you wake up in the morning?
I get on my email.
No, like when you open your eyes and you're lying in bed.
I open my email. Doesn't everybody?
Are you announcing that product soon?
No, it's
Is it like a set of glasses?
It's actually... It's been a while since people have tormented me on my glasses, John.
At least they're clean. When I used to interview Bill Gates, he was always that like smudgy.
No comment. let's talk about what online has meant. People are online all the time now, and Google is part of that. And the thing that I think about at Google is about scaling. When the internet sort of really took off in the mid-90s, a lot of people talked about the scale of how it would be, how big it would be. And it was obvious at the time that there would be a number of companies not yet founded that would become defining companies of that period. In order to win in the internet, you have to have a scaling strategy. You have to be able to be global. You have to have a product that works across many different sources of interest and information, and you have to execute very quickly. So what I worry about these days is scaling. And scaling for Google means more data centers, more fiber optic networks, more cash flow, more people, more training, more product announcements, and things like that. The most amazing thing about that thought process is how early we are in the scaling of the internet. When you think about how much has changed in your daily life, with search engines like Google, Blackberries, now with Google Maps, you can see where you are when you get lost, Google Earth, all the kind of platform things. We're just at the beginning of getting information that has been sort of kept in small networks or small groups onto these platforms. And it has a tremendous impact. Google Earth, for example, we became very concerned about Darfur. I think people here know what's going on there. And it's very difficult to relate to a desert in the middle of Africa without some kind of imagery. So they added a layer which was to personalize it. So people could choose to go see the terrible devastation and destruction that's going on in that region. And it made a difference. Yeah. And there are many, many such opportunities before us. And I think they're good. I think it's good for the world to see what's going on.
Now, last question, we're running a little over, but my sense is that's okay, Johnny. Just last question, because it actually follows from that. I agree with you about how much we have in front of us, and it strikes me how much information is going to be available. One of the largest questions that is facing, I think, this group now is that of data portability and transparency and editing and rights and so on. But we are, all of us, creating extraordinary clouds of data as we cruise around the internet and do transactions in local shops and as the internet sort of infiltrates every edge of our life, as you state. Pulling all that information together and organizing it is actually Google's mission statement. But can I pull it together and organize it and do something with it on my own as mine and give it to someone else, perhaps to Yahoo or to Amazon, and share it? Are you and is Google committed to this idea of data portability?
We are, and in fact, we've made a commitment that we'll never trap user data. We think this is central to the way users view Google. If you felt that Google was doing something bad, we want to let you use somebody else's service. We want you to be able to take the information out of Google and go somewhere else. We're working on technology that will deal with search histories, personal information, Gmail, forwarding. And
I know it's a non-trivial technological thing to do.
Technologically, these systems exist. They're fundamentally successful because end users choose to adopt them. And end users are not going to voluntarily choose to use systems that they're trapped into.
Well, I congratulate you on that policy and plan to hold you to it.
Absolutely.
One last question. You're on the board of Apple.
Yes.
Does that mean you get the iPhone before all of us?
I'm waiting.
You're waiting just like everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
What has that done?
As best I can tell, I don't.
What has that done for you in terms of, oftentimes executives go on boards in order to see another piece of the world that helps inform their company. What have you learned from being on the Apple board?
Well, Apple is an amazing story as a company, as a technology supplier, as a product company. Some of the best people in the world work at Apple building the kind of products that they do. So for me personally, it's fascinating to watch how those decisions are made in a different context and in a different culture, and in one which I have a tremendous amount of respect for. There have been a number of collaborations between Google and Apple. I think the most recent one being Google Maps on the side of the iPhone, which is just an amazing, amazing combination. And I'm sure there will be many more.
Yeah. Apple has an Office suite Was there?
We're back to the first question now.
I like to go for a circle, you know. Any tension on the board around the fact that you guys are starting to get into each other's business? iTunes, YouTube.
iTunes and YouTunes?
Well,
no.
YouTube.
No, the answer is no. We had a long conversation to make sure that let me say it a different way. There are very important laws about director roles, and it's very important to follow them. And we had a long conversation to make sure that I could actually serve the shareholders of Apple while doing my primary duty, which was serving the shareholders of Google.
Great. Well, Eric, thank you very much for your
thank you
time.
all.
Join me in thanking Eric.
Thanks very much. Thank you.